There are moments in life when the weight of betrayal is so heavy, it feels like the very bones within you are cracking under the strain. You wonder, quietly and painfully, how someone you trusted so deeply could choose to become the architect of your ruin. Their actions were not accidental, nor were they careless stumbles in the dark. No, they were deliberate strikes, aimed precisely at the parts of you that held your strength. They studied your kindness, they observed your loyalty, and then they used those very virtues as weapons against you. You felt it, didn't you? The sharpness of their words, the cold distance of their silence, the unbearable loneliness that followed their deceit. It wasn't just an attack against your heart, it was an assault against your very spirit. You see, the greatest wounds are not those that bleed upon the skin, but those that bleed silently within the soul. And you carried those wounds with a quiet dignity, even when the nights were long and the tears felt endless. You questioned your worth in those dark hours. You questioned whether the goodness within you had been a curse instead of a blessing. Had your kindness invited cruelty? Had your loyalty been mistaken for weakness? The enemy would like you to believe so. They would like you to think that their betrayal defined you, that their attempt to break you succeeded. But here is a truth that evil cannot comprehend. The heart that breaks for the right reasons is the heart that heaven holds most closely. What they never understood is that they were not merely fighting against you, they were fighting against the one who crafted you with divine intention. They plotted your downfall as if you stood alone. They orchestrated your heartbreak as if no higher power watched over you. But their eyes were blind to the watchful gaze of God, who sees not only the actions but the motives behind them. God saw every silent tear, every silent prayer, and every moment you felt forgotten by the world. And far from forgetting you, He was gathering each piece of your brokenness, not to discard them, but to forge them into something indestructible. Have you ever wondered why you endured so much? Why it felt as though your spirit was placed in the fire and left to burn? Perhaps it is because God was not only refining you, He was setting the stage for a divine justice that no human hand could prevent. For those who tried to break you have not escaped the weight of their own deeds. Even now, though they may walk with pride, though they may speak with arrogance, the cracks in their foundation are beginning to show. Slowly, silently, and inevitably, the consequences of their cruelty are catching up to them. This is the moment where your sorrow begins to shift. This is where the tide turns. You have carried the burden of pain long enough. Now it is their turn to feel the burden of their choices. You do not need to lift a hand against them, for the justice that comes from God moves with a power far beyond human retaliation. It is patient, it is precise, and it is unavoidable. So, stay with me. There is more you must understand. The story does not end with your pain, and it does not rest in their triumph. Ahead lies the part of your journey where you will witness, not in bitterness, but in quiet vindication, how God will break those who tried to break you. Now let us look deeper into this truth, so that your heart may find the peace it has long been searching for. Their plans against you become their prison. They didn't just hurt you, they calculated it. They sat in the quiet corners of their comfort and plotted your downfall like it was a game. Studying your weaknesses, whispering behind your back, twisting truth into fiction with no trace of hesitation. The betrayal didn't come in a storm, it came in smiles and soft words, while they quietly sharpened their knife. What they thought they were building was a master plan to see you fall, but they didn't realize they were constructing a prison, one they'd eventually have to live in themselves. You remember the moment it all began to unravel, the whispers that turned into rumors, the silence that grew thicker each day, the way people around you began to shift their tone, their posture, their eyes when they looked at you. You questioned yourself, wondering if maybe, Just maybe you had done something wrong. That's the cruelty of betrayal. It doesn't just attack your trust in others, it shakes your trust in yourself. But while you were trying to make sense of your pain, they were rejoicing in it, thinking they had succeeded. What they didn't understand was that the very trap they set for you had already begun to form walls around their own lives. There's something terrifying about playing God with someone else's life. When people try to break others for their own gain, they invite a kind of curse that doesn't strike immediately, but it does strike with precision. At first, they're blind to it. They continue with their performance, smiling for the world while you silently suffer in the shadows. But those shadows, they begin to follow them, the manipulation, the deceit, the evil. They can't hold it all together forever. They become paranoid, always watching, always wondering who will find out next, and that paranoia becomes their cell. The walls close in tighter with every lie they told, every friend they turned against you, every time they rejoiced over your heartbreak. You may not see their suffering immediately. You may feel like they're getting away with it, but God is patient in His justice. And justice that is delayed is never justice that is denied. Their own choices will begin to haunt them, and they will be bound by the same net they cast toward you. Their plans didn't just fail, they turned into chains. Chains that will wrap tighter with every passing day, and the more they struggle, the more tangled they become. That's the fate of those who wage war against a pure heart. The battlefield becomes their prison, and the war never ends for them. Your story was never theirs to ruin, but they tried. They put all their energy into tearing you down, and in doing so they created a reality in which they can never find peace. Because peace cannot exist where deception has been the foundation. And whether they confess it or not, they are trapped in a world of their own making. The irony is poetic. They tried to write your ending, but instead, they've locked themselves in a chapter they can't escape from. One where you move forward in healing, and they remain stuck, haunted by the plans that turned against them. The weight of guilt will crush their pride. Pride is a fragile thing. It walks tall, speaks loudly, and wears the mask of confidence. But behind closed doors, pride has no defense against guilt. And guilt, once it begins to grow, becomes unbearable. They mocked your pain, dismissed your loyalty, and acted as if their cruelty had no cost. They convinced themselves that you were weak and that hurting you was justified. But what they didn't account for was the quiet, creeping power of guilt, and how it begins not with a scream, but with a whisper in the dark. At first they brushed it off. The memory of what they did to you, how they used you, ignored your cries, twisted your love, was just a passing thought, something easy to forget. But slowly that thought began to return. It came back in the form of silence when the noise faded. In the stillness of the night, when the lights go out and no one is around to validate their actions, the guilt starts speaking. It tells them what they don't want to hear, that they were wrong, that you were genuine, that the harm they caused wasn't deserved. And it eats at them, not all at once, but piece by piece, until even their most carefully constructed pride begins to crack. Guilt doesn't destroy them publicly. It doesn't embarrass them in front of others. No, it's far more personal than that. It waits until they're alone, until they're face to face with their reflection, and suddenly the mask of pride they wore so effortlessly begins to feel heavy. They remember the way you looked when you trusted them. They remember the hope in your eyes, the softness in your tone, and they recall how they shattered it, without mercy, without regret. But the regret is coming now, and it's too late to undo what's already been done. The universe has a divine way of turning mirrors into windows. Eventually, they'll stop seeing themselves as powerful and begin seeing through the lens of those they've hurt. And when that shift happens, Pride has nowhere left to stand. It collapses under the weight of guilt that cannot be denied. They may try to escape it, numb it with distractions, deny it with justifications, but guilt isn't something you run from. It waits, it grows, and it always returns. You may never hear the apology, you may never receive the confession, but rest assured, they are living with the weight of what they did to you, and it is not light. It presses against their chest when they laugh. It pulls at their spirit when they try to rest, and it steals the peace they once took for granted. The same pride that allowed them to hurt you without flinching is now collapsing under the very guilt they thought would never come. This is the justice you were promised, not through revenge, but through the undeniable crushing force of a conscience that can't forget. Their reputation will crumble beneath the truth. They thought they could craft an illusion so flawless that it would outlast the truth. They believed their lies would stand like stone walls, too strong for reality to ever break through. With cunning smiles, they painted you as the villain while they draped themselves in false innocence. They spread stories not to seek justice, but to hide their guilt and manipulate how others saw you. And for a time it seemed to work. People doubted you. Whispers filled rooms before you entered them. Trusts you had spent years building were shaken like fragile glass. You felt the sting of being misunderstood, of carrying the weight of accusations that were never yours to bear. But truth, no matter how long it is buried, is not dead. It breathes beneath the soil of deception, growing in strength until the day it bursts forth and shatters the surface. And when that moment comes, it is unstoppable. Slowly, steadily, people begin to see what was always there but cleverly hidden. They start to notice the inconsistencies in their stories, the cracks in their carefully constructed facades. Doubts creep into the minds of those who once believed them blindly. And as those doubts grow, their reputation, the very thing they valued most, begins to crumble beneath the undeniable weight of truth. It is not you who needs to fight for your name. The truth itself fights on your behalf. You endured the shame in silence, carrying the burden they unjustly placed on you. But time has a way of peeling back the layers of deceit. It reveals the selfish motives behind their actions, the manipulation behind their words. Slowly, the people around them start to distance themselves, not because you forced them to choose, but because the truth has made the choice undeniable. And there is a deep justice in this unraveling, for as their reputation falls apart, they are forced to watch the collapse they once wished upon you. Every lie they told becomes a stone too heavy to carry. Every twisted version of the truth turns into a mirror reflecting their true nature. They thought they could escape accountability by tarnishing your image, but in the end they have only soiled their own. Their downfall in the eyes of others is not your victory born from revenge. It is the natural consequence of truth reclaiming its rightful place. They will see doors closed that once opened easily for them. They will hear their names spoken not with respect, but with suspicion. They will notice the glances, the avoidance, the quiet withdrawal of trust that once surrounded them like armor. And there will be no one left to shield them, no more lies strong enough to hide behind. The beauty of divine justice is that it requires no announcement. It unfolds quietly but unmistakably, like dawn breaking after the longest night. Their reputation, once built on deception, now collapses under the weight of truth rising like the sun. And while they scramble to gather the pieces, they will come to understand that what they tried to destroy in you has only returned to consume them. Their circle of influence will collapse. There was a time when they walked among many, surrounded by admirers, friends, and allies who believed in the mask they wore so well. They stood at the center of attention, gathering people around them with charm and false virtue. They thrived in this circle of influence, using it as both a shield and a weapon. They relied on the power of numbers to validate their actions and silence your truth. When you spoke your pain, they drowned it in the noise of their supporters. When you showed your hurt, they mocked it under the cover of group approval. They believed that as long as they were not alone, they were invincible. But influence built on deceit is like a house of cards, fragile, unstable, and destined to fall at the slightest breath of truth. The people they once counted on begin to feel an unease they cannot explain. Doubts creep in like shadows at the edges of their loyalty. They start to see the manipulations, the self-serving nature behind every seemingly innocent action. They remember moments when something felt off, but were too afraid to question it. Now those questions grow louder. Their circle begins to shrink, not with dramatic exits, but with quiet distancing. Friends become acquaintances, allies turn into observers. The applause they once received turns into uncomfortable silence. Those who once defended them start to wonder who they've been protecting all along, and in this erosion of influence, they face a fear they never prepared for: isolation. It is a terrifying thing to lose the crowd when you have built your power upon it. Without the noise, they are left alone with their thoughts, their guilt, and their crumbling pride. They look around for the support that once came so easily, only to find empty spaces where loyalty used to stand. The walls that once echoed with the validation of many now resound with a deafening silence. You, who once felt outnumbered and overwhelmed, now stand as a quiet witness to their unraveling. There is a deep and undeniable justice in seeing how those who used the crowd to amplify their cruelty now find themselves abandoned by that very same crowd, and they will feel it deeply. Every conversation that stops when they enter the room, every invitation that never arrives, every lingering glance that questions their integrity, all of it will weigh heavily on their soul. What they once wielded as a weapon has turned against them. The circle they believed would shield them from consequences has dissolved, leaving them exposed to the reality they fought so hard to avoid. They stand no longer in the center of attention, but in the center of their own reckoning. The collapse of their influence is not just a loss of power. It is the beginning of their awakening to the damage they have done, and there is no crowd left to drown out that truth. They will watch you rise from the ashes they created. There is no agony more searing for those who once rejoiced in your downfall than to witness your rise from the very ruins they tried to leave you in. In their eyes, your collapse was meant to be permanent. They imagined you buried beneath the weight of their cruelty, your dreams shattered like glass beneath their feet, your spirit extinguished as though it could not endure the storm they unleashed. They thought they had succeeded in silencing you, dimming your light, erasing your presence from the paths you once walked with pride. But what they failed to understand is that some souls are not destroyed by the fire. They are reborn within it. When you were in the depths of despair, you felt the suffocating grip of hopelessness. You saw the wreckage around you, the pieces of your trust, your dignity, your dreams scattered like ashes on the cold floor of betrayal. In those moments, you questioned whether you could ever rebuild what had been taken from you. Their cruelty had pushed you to the brink, and they stood at a distance, watching, satisfied in their belief that you would never recover. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, something began to stir within you. In the quietest moments when no one else could see, you started gathering those broken pieces, not as a victim clinging to remnants of the past, but as a survivor, forging something stronger. You took the very ashes of your devastation and shaped them into the foundation of your renewal. And with every step you took toward healing, you unknowingly began to craft the very scene they now dread, the spectacle of your rise. They underestimated your resilience. They failed to recognize that the human spirit, when held by divine hands, possesses a strength beyond understanding. They saw only weakness in your pain, never realizing that pain is often the soil where the seeds of strength take root. As you began to rise, your progress was not a sudden eruption, but a steady, undeniable ascent. You moved through the shadows they left you in, carrying your scars not as symbols of defeat, but as emblems of survival. And now, as they watch, their eyes are filled with a mixture of disbelief and quiet fear. They witness you standing taller, speaking louder, moving forward with a grace that exposes their failure. Every achievement you claim is a silent testimony against their cruelty. Every moment of joy that returns to your life echoes as a reminder that they did not succeed. They wanted you to be a ghost haunting your own life, but instead you have become a living proof of divine justice, an undeniable evidence that what is meant for harm can be turned into a greater good. What burns them the most is not just your recovery, but the radiance with which you rise. You do not crawl from the wreckage, you ascend with a power that commands attention. They are forced to confront a truth they cannot escape. Their efforts to bury you have only fertilized the soil from which your strength has grown. Each step you take forward tears at the fabric of the false victory they once celebrated. Where they expected your silence, they hear your voice growing stronger. Where they anticipated your defeat, they see your triumph unfolding. They thought they could write the ending to your story, but instead, they are now mere bystanders in a narrative they can no longer control. And this truth torments them. Their pride shatters with every new chapter you write. Their satisfaction decays with every breath of life you reclaim. They are haunted not by your weakness, but by your undeniable resilience. They are spectators to a resurrection they never believed possible. This is the justice that requires no revenge. It is the justice that unfolds naturally as light overcomes darkness, as truth eclipses lies. Their punishment is in the witnessing, seeing you thrive where they intended you to perish, and though they may try to mask their discomfort, it clings to them like a shadow that no amount of pretense can shake off. They will carry the weight of this sight wherever they go, unable to escape the vision of the one they tried to break, becoming unbreakable before their very eyes. The ashes they scattered beneath you were never your grave. They were the bedrock of your rebirth. And now they stand powerless as you rise, not as the person they once tried to destroy, but as someone far stronger, far wiser, and far beyond their reach. God will strip them of their false comfort. There is a peculiar kind of comfort that people cling to after they have caused harm, a comfort built not on peace, but on denial. They wrap themselves in it like a thick cloak, believing it will shield them from the cold winds of consequence. They tell themselves stories to justify their actions, painting themselves as heroes in their own minds while casting you as the villain in the narrative they invented. They surround themselves with noise, with distractions, with shallow pleasures that momentarily dull the ache of guilt that presses against their hearts. They build walls out of fleeting pleasures, thinking those walls will protect them from the inevitable reckoning that follows cruelty. But no wall built by human hands can stand against the justice of God. They may have laughed in the aftermath of your pain. They may have celebrated in secret, believing they had succeeded in wounding you beyond repair. Their comfort came from the false belief that there would be no price to pay for their actions. They found solace in their temporary victories, in the small, cruel satisfactions of seeing you broken. They mistook delay for escape, but comfort built on the foundation of another's suffering is a fragile and treacherous thing. It cracks under the weight of truth. It crumbles when faced with the reality that no evil deed goes unseen by the one who governs justice. In the quiet moments they tried to avoid, their false comfort began to falter. When the noise faded, when the distractions wore thin, and when they were left alone with nothing but their thoughts, they felt it. The slow, creeping erosion of their self-deception. What once felt like comfort now feels like a hollow shell. The pleasures they once indulged in feel tasteless. The celebrations feel empty. The victories feel meaningless. They chase after more noise, more distraction, more temporary satisfaction, but it slips through their fingers like sand, never able to fill the void growing inside them. God in His wisdom knows how to dismantle false comfort piece by piece. He allows them to build it high, to believe in its strength, to rely on it completely, and then, with a precision that cannot be avoided, He begins to strip it away. Not in rage, not in chaos, but with a quiet, unrelenting force that leaves no part of their false refuge intact. He allows them to see the truth, not all at once, but gradually, painfully, so they feel every piece of their comfort fall away. They wake up to the realization that what once made them feel secure is now a source of their deepest unrest. The relationships they once used as shields begin to dissolve. The laughter they once weaponized against you grows silent. The approval they once sought from others turns to indifference or suspicion. They notice the shift, they feel the change, but they cannot stop it. They may try to grasp tighter, to rebuild what is falling apart, but their efforts are futile, because it was never real to begin with. Comfort gained through cruelty is a counterfeit comfort. It is destined to decay because it was never built to last. You, who watch them from the depths of your pain, need not lift a finger. The same God who saw your tears, who witnessed your silent suffering, is the one who now orchestrates the unraveling of their false sanctuary. He strips them of their illusions, not out of cruelty, but out of justice. He ensures that the comfort they built upon your suffering becomes their torment, and they will feel it deeply and relentlessly. Every hollow laugh, every moment of forced joy, every desperate attempt to recreate the satisfaction they once felt will only remind them of what they have lost. They will come to understand, in ways they never anticipated, that the peace they sought to steal from you was never truly theirs. It was borrowed time, and now the debt is being called in. They will search for the solace they once found in their schemes, but it will evade them at every turn. The comforts that once dulled their conscience now serve as sharp reminders of their guilt. They will come to realize that no distraction is strong enough to silence the voice of truth that echoes louder with every passing day. Their comfort was their hiding place, their safe haven from the weight of their act. But God in His justice does not allow such hiding places to stand. One by one, He removes the supports they trusted until they are left exposed, vulnerable, and unable to run from the consequences they thought they had escaped. In this stripping away, they are forced to confront the reality they spent so long denying. They see their false refuge for what it truly was, an illusion, fragile and fleeting, never able to protect them from the inevitable reckoning of divine justice. Their soul will be restless until they face their own reflection. There is a peculiar kind of punishment that goes far beyond what the world can see. It does not come in the form of public shame or physical loss. It is quieter, crueler, more consuming. It settles deep within the soul, weaving itself into the very fabric of a person's being, no matter how fiercely they try to escape it. This is the unrest of the spirit, the inescapable torment that begins when a person is finally forced to confront the truth of what they have done. And for those who tried to break you, this moment will not only arrive, but it will live with them like a shadow they cannot outrun. They have done everything possible to avoid this mirror. They filled their days with noise, with distractions, with empty victories that momentarily silenced the whisper of their conscience. They surrounded themselves with people who fed their ego, who reassured them of their righteousness, even as they carried the weight of their wrongdoing like an invisible chain. But chains cannot be hidden forever. They clank and rattle in the quiet moments, no matter how desperately they try to keep them still. And there always comes a moment when the noise dies down, when the crowd disperses and they are left alone, not just with their thoughts, but with their reflection. This reflection is not the one they see in the mirror every morning, the one they dress up to face the world. No, this is the reflection of their soul, stripped of every mask and pretense, illuminated by the light of truth that they can no longer dim. In this reflection, they see not the powerful, confident image they once projected to the world, but the reality of who they have become. They see the manipulation in their own eyes, the cruelty etched into the lines of their expression, the hollowness carved by their own betrayals. At first, they will deny it, they will look away, they will distract themselves, they will argue within their own mind, building walls of justification and excuses. But the reflection is patient. It waits in the quiet corners of their life, reappearing in their dreams, in fleeting moments of stillness, in the pauses between breaths. And with each appearance, it grows clearer, sharper, more undeniable. They will feel it gnawing at them, a restless unease that no amount of distraction can soothe. This restlessness begins as a whisper but grows into a roar. It speaks in the language of sleepless nights and hollow days. It weighs heavy on their chest in moments when they should feel joy, sapping their victories of all satisfaction. The meals they once enjoyed will lose their flavor. The laughter they once indulged in will ring hollow in their ears. They will find themselves haunted by memories they tried to bury. Memories of your trust, your kindness, your undeserved pain, and those memories will not fade. They will sharpen, cutting deeper with time. What torments them most is not simply the memory of what they did, but the realization that they cannot undo it. Regret is a heavy burden, but regret combined with helplessness is unbearable. They will relive their choices over and over again, questioning what they could have done differently, knowing all the while that the past is fixed, unchangeable, carved into the story of their life. And every time they look into the reflection of their soul, they will see those choices staring back at them, inescapable, unerasable. Their soul, once so confident in its path, will become a battleground. They will feel the internal war between denial and truth, between pride and guilt, raging endlessly within them. They will crave peace, but find none. They will search for escape, but discover there is nowhere left to hide. No corner of their mind offers sanctuary when the soul itself is restless. This is a justice that no courtroom can deliver, no punishment can replicate. It is deeply personal, deeply inescapable. It is the weight of their own conscience pressing down on them day after day, moment after moment, until they are forced to confront the fullness of their actions. They will see the brokenness they tried to inflict upon you now reflected in their own spirit. They will feel the pain they once dismissed as insignificant, now living within them as a constant companion. The world may never see their suffering. Those around them might remain unaware of the turmoil that storms within their heart, but they will feel it fully and completely. Their soul will be restless, not just for a moment, not just for a season, but until the day they are brave enough to face their reflection without turning away. And until that moment arrives, if it ever does, they will carry the torment of their actions like a fire that never burns out. And now, as we come to the quiet closing of this truth-filled journey, let us pause and let it all sink in. Look at the weight of the story you have carried on your shoulders for so long. The silent battles, the invisible scars, the nights spent questioning why they chose to hurt you, why they targeted your heart when all you had ever offered was loyalty, kindness, and love. You gave them trust, they gave you wounds. You gave them your pure intentions, they gave you betrayal. And while they went on, laughing and living as if your suffering meant nothing, you were left in the shadows, gathering the broken pieces of yourself in silence. But God saw it all. Every moment you felt invisible, He was watching. Every time you held back tears in public and cried alone at night, He was listening. He saw how they paraded their false victory as though it was final, not knowing that the author of justice had not yet written the last chapter. You must understand. Their laughter was temporary. Their comfort was borrowed. Their arrogance was short-lived. Because the justice of God does not sleep, and the longer it waits, the heavier it falls. You, who thought you were buried under the weight of their cruelty, were never buried. You were planted, and now you rise. You rise not just in strength, but in divine vindication. They, who once stood proudly over your pain, now stand beneath the crushing weight of their own choices. The seeds of harm they sowed so carelessly have taken root in their own lives, and what they gave to you has returned to them, doubled in force. But listen closely. The beauty of divine justice is that you do not need to seek revenge. You do not need to tarnish your soul with bitterness. Stand tall and let God complete the work He has already begun. Let Him carry the weight of justice while you carry the light of healing. Watch from a distance as He strips away their false comforts, collapses their illusions, and brings them face to face with the reflection they have long feared. Watch how their plans entangle them, how guilt cracks their pride, how isolation drains their influence, how truth crumbles their reputation, and how their restless soul torments them in silence. You are no longer the victim of their story. You are the survivor, the overcomer, the living proof that God never forgets His faithful ones. You rise not in secret, but in the undeniable light of redemption. Every step you take forward is a testimony of their failure and God's victory. Every breath you take in healing is a reminder that they never held the power they believed they did. So hold your head high. Walk in quiet strength. Carry the peace they tried to steal from you, knowing that you are divinely protected, and they are divinely pursued by their own actions. Justice has a name, and it belongs to the one who fights for you. The battle was never yours to begin with. It was always in the hands of God. Let your soul rest, knowing that the balance has been restored. Let your heart heal, knowing that the pain you carried was not in vain. And let your eyes look forward, not with bitterness, but with the calm, steady assurance that God has seen it all, and His justice never fails.